Greetings. My name is Dr. Waddell Brooks, Sr., your host, and this is Community Focus. This morning, we're very fortunate to have with us attorney Michael Nerheim. He's a Republican candidate, Office of Lake County State's Attorney. Good morning, Attorney Nerheim.
Good morning.
We're very happy that you're taking time for your busy schedule to be with us on Community Focus. Wow, Lake County is approximately 780,000 people, but I don't know how many up at 5 o'clock this morning, to listen to the program. But I understand we have a pretty good audience.
Absolutely.
And we want you to tell us, first of all, a little bit about your personal and professional background.
Sure. Well, I was born in Waukegan, raised in Waukegan. I live in Gurnee with my family. I'm a lifelong resident of Lake County. As far as my professional background, I served time in the state's attorney's office here in Lake County. Right after law school, I was an assistant state's attorney there. I worked there for about 7.5 years. And during that time, I worked through all the different divisions, criminal divisions in the office, and I've handled thousands and thousands of criminal cases, tried hundreds of cases ranging from traffic offenses to murder. So I have a very broad range of experience with regard to criminal prosecution. About 5.5 years ago, I left the office, and I've been in private practice in Waukegan, and I handle mostly criminal defense cases, and I've handled thousands of cases on behalf of regular people who are charged with crimes here in Lake County, making sure that their rights are respected and upheld, and making sure that they're treated fairly by the system. I've also handled civil and municipal cases. I teach evidence at Columbia College of Missouri, and I have some local businesses here in Lake County. I'm a partner in a law firm. Actually have a business as well where a partner of mine and I rehab old buildings. And that's been kind of a love for me, because it's nice to work with my hands once in a while and take things that are old and dilapidated and try and make them fresh and new again.
I noticed that you're highly recommended by attorneys and judges and so forth here in Lake County, so you're no stranger. And I mention that because when you're running for an office in Lake County, it's a large area to cover, and so forth. But you have been around for a while, and you've done some great work here in Lake County.
I'm proud of the work I've done in Lake County, and I'm new to politics. This is the first office I've ever sought, and the only office I've sought. And this is an office that I'm seeking because I care very much about our community. And as I said, I'm raising my family here, my kids here. And as state's attorney, you are the chief law enforcement officer for the county. And in that position, you are uniquely qualified and situated to make sure two things. Number one, that the streets are safe, which we're all concerned about. And myself as a parent and a husband and a son and a father, I'm concerned about those as well. And also to make sure people are treated fairly. And when you talk about a prosecutor, those are the two qualities you want to see. Somebody that's going to make sure people are treated fairly and also make sure that our streets are safe.
Ladies and gentlemen, again, we're talking with attorney Michael Nerheim. He's a Republican candidate, Office of Lake County State's Attorney. Attorney Nerheim, you mentioned something that everybody's interested in. You're interested in getting justice for everyone in the county. It doesn't matter whether you're a Republican or Democrat. Politics should not play a part in it, right?
I couldn't agree with you more, and I've said that from day one. And I think when you talk about the state's attorney's office and you start mentioning in the same sentence Republican or Democrat or any party, you're really missing the point of that office. And I am running as a Republican. I just came out of a very difficult primary, Republican Party primary, where I had two opponents. I was not the Republican Party's choice in the primary. Every elected official in the Republican Party had endorsed my opponent. Every precinct committeeman was working for my opponent. So I was really up against the entire Republican Party in the primary. And the theme I heard, though, when I went out and talked to people, because I was able to win that primary by working hard and talking to the people. And the theme that I kept hearing was people do not want that office to be political. And when I would go to the door of Republican primary voters, those people would ask me almost to a person, are you the Republican Party's choice? And when I'd tell them, no, I'm not, they were glad to hear that, because they understand that for that particular office, they don't want it to be a party office, whether it's the Democrat or Republican Party. They want somebody that, again, is going to be fair, not beholden to either party, somebody that's going to represent the people and make sure, again, that people are treated fairly and that the streets are safe. So although it was a very difficult primary because I was up against the entire Republican Party, as I sit here now, I'm glad that it went that way because I feel that I don't owe anything to anybody except the people, and I will enforce the law regardless of who's on the other side of it. If somebody's charged with a crime, I'm not concerned with their party affiliation. I'm concerned with making sure that they're brought to justice.
You know, Lake County is probably the third most populated county in the state. I think there's Cook County, there's probably DuPage. And
DuPage is right there with us. This is the third biggest state's attorney's office in the county, and DuPage has us by a couple of people. But this is a pretty good-sized office, 150 people work in the office, about 78 attorneys. So in terms of state's attorney's offices in Illinois, this is one of the largest. There are several offices throughout the state where there's one or maybe two or three assistant state's attorneys. So this is a big office.
One of the questions I always ask is that, what about the cultural diversity of your Lake County assistant state's attorneys?
Quite frankly, I know just about everybody that works in the office because I've either worked with them when I used to work in the office, or I've handled cases against them because I'm in court every day, and I'm very familiar with the makeup of the office. And I don't believe that the racial or cultural makeup of the state's attorney's office right now is certainly reflective of our community, and that needs to change. And one of the things I've noticed, as you indicated earlier, this is a big county. You're talking about over 700,000 people, and geographically it's a big county. And I've been all over just about every inch of it over the course of the last year, and I've noticed that there's a lot of different types of groups of people throughout this county, and I think that's a good thing. Our diversity is what makes us strong, and it's been fun for me to go around the county and to talk to different groups of people. But we need to make sure that the makeup of the office is reflective of the community, because as a state's attorney and as an assistant state's attorney, you are there to serve the people of this county, and the people need to know that they're being represented.
I remember as far back as Dennis Ryan. I don't know if you remember him, and Attorney Dennis Ryan. You know, I went into his office, and he said, Waddell, if you find me an African American, I'll hire him. You know, and I went as far as I attended a conference, I believe, in Chicago, and I met a attorney from just come out of John Marshall Law School, and I asked him about coming up. He's from Indiana. By the way, he is a judge now in East Chicago, Indiana. And he only stayed here a year, but he said, Waddell, I came because you asked me to come, but it's too much traveling, you know. Yeah. But at least he was the first African-American assistant state's attorney, Lonnie Randolph. So when Attorney Fred Foreman got elected, he told me the same thing, you know, find me one. And so I happened to find a female in Chicago. She's with the Continental Bank there in Chicago, but locally she was from North Chicago, and she was hired. But I, in other words, I didn't think it was that difficult to get African Americans hired in the assistant state's attorney's office if there's a commitment. And I think even now there's maybe two, I think, right?
There's
one
two.
One male, one female.
Correct. There's two. One of them, Reggie Matthews, was a candidate in the Democratic primary. He's a very good friend of mine, and should I be successful in November, he will definitely remain in the state's attorney's office.
Okay.
But we need more than two. And what I would say about that is the state's attorney's office used to be, and we're not going back too far for this, but it used to be sort of a stepping stone in people's legal careers. People would go work there for a few years, and then they would move on into the private sector. And what we've seen happen is as we've seen in all other areas, that the state's attorney's office has really become an area where now people will stay and make that a career, because the private sector, even in the legal field, has taken a bit of a hit recently with the economy. So we've had attorneys that normally would want to go out into that private sector are wanting to stay and work in the public sector. And also, we've seen attorneys from firms in the city that have been laid off that now want to come and work in the government sector. And the nice thing about the state's attorney's office is if you want to try cases, if you want to go to court, that's the place to be, because you will be in court every day and you will be able to try as many cases as you want. So if you want to get that trial experience, it's a great job. And you have the ability to make sure people are treated fairly and to seek justice. The pay is certainly competitive with the private sector. And when you add in benefits that a lot of people in the private sector don't have, it becomes a very sought-after position. So the nice thing about that is now we have a situation where an office that used to be a stepping stone, now there's a waiting list, a rather long waiting list of people that are seeking employment with the state's attorney's office and are willing to make that their career and stay there for their entire careers. So we are able to attract some of the best talent out there, and we need to do a better job, I think, of reaching out to the different communities to make sure that we're seeking assistance from a diverse background.
Ladies and gentlemen, again, we're talking with Attorney Michael Nerheim, Republican candidate for the office of Lake County State's Attorney. I would like to say this, too, that the views expressed by our guests are not those of the host or the station, but of his. So I would like to, Attorney Nerheim, tell us, why do you think you are the best candidate for the position? This is your opportunity.
Well, I think two words sum it up, independence and experience. I believe I have the most relevant experience for this position, having been a prosecutor and having tried every different type of criminal case you can try, very serious felony matters as a prosecutor, and also as a defense attorney. I think gives me a unique perspective, a unique ability to go into that office and hit the ground running. I know it needs to be done, and I'm not afraid to make the tough changes that need to be made to restore the reputation of the office. I've been on the outside of that office for several years, and in fact, I go to court every day here in Lake County and handle cases against the state's attorney's office. And again, that gives me a perspective that I don't think other candidates have, where I can go in and, again, make the changes that need to be made, represent people, because I understand that being a prosecutor is not simply about seeking convictions. It's about seeking justice and making sure people are treated fairly. And as a state's attorney, you represent the defendant and you represent the victim. Your job is to make sure people are treated fairly. And with regard to independence, as we discussed earlier, I'm beholden to no party, to no person, to no special interest groups. I'm here to serve the people of this county, and I'm not the Republican Party's choice. I wasn't in the primary. And when I win the general election, you will have a state's attorney in Lake County that is beholden to neither party. And that's what this office should be about. And that's what I've heard consistently from the people of this county when I go out and talk to people. They don't want politics to be any part of any discussion regarding the state's attorney's office, and nor do I.
It sounds like you're an attorney that think outside of the box.
Absolutely.
You know, there have been two additions in the courts. There's a drug court, and also there's a mental health court, I believe. You know,
drug court, mental health court. There's actually a third, veterans court.
Oh no, is that new now?
That's relatively new. And drug court, when it started here several years ago, I was the first assistant state's attorney assigned to drug court, and it's a great program. I'd like to expand all three of those programs. And what they are programs that recognize, we'll talk about drug court first, there's a certain subset of offenders that keep going in and out of prison, essentially for their entire lives, because they keep committing nonviolent felony offenses. And what we've recognized as a society is that the basis for this criminal behavior is a drug addiction. And typically somebody, their first time offense, you receive court supervision and then probation and maybe jail. And after several convictions, somebody may go to the Department of Corrections. Once somebody goes to the Department of Corrections, if they come out and commit another felony offense, they keep going back to the Department of Corrections. We don't go back and give them probation again, typically. What we're starting to see with a certain subset of offenders is that sort of in and out of prison scenario doesn't work. If we take those people, recognize that the basis for their criminal behavior is a drug addiction, and treat that drug addiction to make sure that they can overcome their addiction. What we found is if you take drugs out of the equation, these people would never have otherwise been involved in the system, and they don't go back to prison. Drug court is a very, very intensive probation program where you go to court once a week. You are essentially told where you can live, where you can work, where you can date. And the treatment is, as I said, very intensive, but it works. And it breaks that cycle, because taking drug addicts and putting them in prison is not the answer. Right. Veterans Court is another great program which recognizes that there's people coming back from overseas that have been fighting for us, and because of their service to our country and some of the things that they've had to endure during that service, they come back with issues that they may not have otherwise had they not served.
One is PTSD.
Right.
Post-traumatic PTSD syndrome. But post-traumatic, I know this acronym, but I can't think of the word.
Post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah, okay, great.
And what that does is it leads to an increase in alcohol-related crimes and domestic battery and things like that.
Okay.
And with the consent of the victim and with treatment, this allows these men and women that, again, come back from overseas with these issues to treat those issues without just giving them a conviction. And we have a problem, I think, in our society where it's too easy to put people in jail and to give people convictions. We have to make sure we're putting the right people in jail. And those people that need a second chance, those people that need treatment, we need to make sure they get that treatment, because our jails are full. And filling up jails is not the answer. And again, the answer is to make sure we're putting the right people in jail so our streets are safe.
The cost of incarceration, too, from the county, state, and federal level. At the federal level, approximately $90,000 a year. The state is probably $35,000 to $40,000, and I don't know what the county's cost.
It's much more effective to treat people than to put them in jail, if you can, and regardless of the cost. If it costs more to treat somebody than to put them in jail, I would still advocate treatment in those scenarios. This isn't a cost issue. But the reality of it is that it is more cost-effective to treat than to simply lock somebody up. But it's much better for society, I think, to make sure people are treated. And again, there's a lot of people that have made poor mistakes, made poor decisions, and because of that, they may have convictions on their record. I spend a lot of time working with the Coalition to Reduce Recidivism and with FIST and some of these other programs. I volunteer a lot of time to help people clear up their record and expunge their record, so they can be productive members of society. And our expungement laws make it very difficult to expunge a prior conviction. And what we've seen is when there's a situation that occurs, our legislature reacts by making that crime, which may have been a misdemeanor in the past, now a felony. And I've seen in my legal career several offenses that used to be misdemeanor conduct, which are now felony conduct. And I think we're getting to the point quickly where just about every type of criminal conduct will result in felony liability. And we're going to have a society of felons, convicted felons, which is not the answer. And to saddle somebody with a felony conviction at a young age for a mistake they made on a nonviolent criminal offense, I think is missing the point, because now you have somebody that will have that conviction on their record for the rest of their life. And when they want to go out into the workforce and have a family and pay taxes and have a job, it's going to be very difficult to do. And I see every day in my practice where I'm trying to help people erase a mistake that they made 10, 20 years ago, and it simply can't be done. And there are programs that I propose to bring here to Lake County to allow first-time nonviolent offenders the opportunity to pay their debt to society through restitution and public service and treatment, and not have a criminal conviction on their record. That will do two things. It will, number one, take some of these nonviolent cases out of our court system, which are really clogging up our court system, and allow us the ability to focus on the more serious, violent criminals who are harming our streets, and make sure that we can focus our time and attention on those folks and give the people that deserve a second chance that second chance.
The intervention of DNA evidence, too, has changed the system quite a bit, too.
DNA has become a topic recently in the media. DNA has always been an issue as far as I'm concerned, but it's not the issue.
Okay.
DNA is a form of evidence. It's not the only piece of evidence. It's a type of evidence. Sometimes it's very effective and very powerful. Sometimes it is not. We have to make sure that our prosecutors in the state's attorney's office are consistently trained and retrained with regard to DNA, because that science develops, it seems like almost daily. And I've prosecuted with DNA as a prosecutor. I've defended with DNA as a defense attorney. I teach DNA in my evidence class that I teach at Columbia College. So I'm aware of DNA, but we need to make sure that everybody in that office is up to speed on that science as it develops and continues to develop.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the cost. Your budget in the state's attorney's office is it runs approximately?
It's about $13.5 million.
Okay. What about the growth of gangs in Lake County? Evidently, there's a high growth for some reason. You think it may be influx from Chicago, city of Chicago?
I think it's a combination of a lot of factors, but that's certainly one of them. And the recent studies that have come out suggest that the highest gang population in the United States is in Chicago.
Wow.
And we have estimates of up to 39 to 40,000 gang members here in Lake County. This is an issue that is very important to me, and I've put out several pieces on this throughout my campaign, and I'm going to make this an issue with the state's attorney's office if I become the next state's attorney, because I see the threat of gangs as really one of the top, if not the top threat to our community right now here in Lake County. Gangs, guns, and drugs is really the triple threat, and they're all connected. I've seen a rise in gang violence in the Waukegan area in the last several years, but gangs are not limited to the Waukegan, North Chicago, Zion areas. There are gangs throughout this county, and I spend a lot of time going to the different areas in this county, making sure that the people are educated and aware of the fact that gangs exist everywhere. I saw Peace Stone graffiti in Lake Zurich not too long ago. So the gangs are everywhere, and we have to make sure that we are looking at this on a county-wide level. And I've spent a lot of time over the course of the last several months speaking with law enforcement leaders throughout Lake County. And what I found is that with respect to each individual police department throughout the county, there are officers within those departments that are very aware of the gang situation within their respective town. There are officers in every police department throughout this county that can tell you who's in their town, what gang they're affiliated with, and what they're probably doing at this moment. What we need to make sure we're doing is communicating and dealing with this on a county-wide level. And one of the things I propose to bring to the state's attorney's office is a gang prosecution unit. Currently, we handle gang cases separately. If there's a gang case in one courtroom that's a shooting involving one gang and another in another courtroom involving another gang, those two gang cases are very likely related. One may be retaliatory from another, but they are related in the bigger picture. The problem is right now, we are looking at those two cases individually, and one prosecutor is prosecuting her case in one courtroom and another prosecutor is prosecuting his case in another courtroom, and they may not even be communicating with each other with regard to how those cases may be related. So having a gang unit will allow us to work on all those cases together to make sure we're keeping that big picture in mind. And also we have some new legislation that Governor Quinn has recently signed, which allows state-level RICO prosecutions, which is a way that the federal government has sort of tackled organized crime. And that's a federal government way of prosecuting and investigating some of these cases that now we have the ability to use here in the state courts. Now that's going to involve working with law enforcement to help train them in terms of building these cases, because it's a different way of putting a case together, and it's a different way of prosecuting cases. So we have to make sure that we're working together with law enforcement, we're communicating, and we're keeping this big picture in mind so we're effectively prosecuting these gang cases. Heroin is a huge problem in Lake County, and that's a problem up along the North Shore, and it's an area where I've also spent a lot of time going out speaking with people to try and educate them And it's a problem I found with regard to parents not wanting to see this as an issue. And this is an issue in Lake Forest and Deerfield and Highland Park and Buffalo Grove and those areas that, unfortunately, I've found a lot of parents don't want to accept exist. We've had almost 40 heroin overdose deaths this year alone in Lake County. Cook County is one of the hubs for heroin distribution in this country, so heroin is very easy to get. It's relatively inexpensive. It's incredibly addictive, and it's terribly destructive to people's lives, and it's something I see every day. And it's all related because the gangs are funded through drug sales, and these gangs and these drugs combined with the devastating effect that they've had with weapons and guns are really destroying our community, and we have to get serious about it.
Touch on, before we leave, another aspect, the importance of family court.
Family court in Lake County with regard to divorce cases and family law cases, that's an area where I don't practice family law. I tell people I'm too nice to practice family law. It's very difficult, but it's unfortunately an area where there's a lot of emotion. And when you talk about people's lives and relationships being changed, that's where there is a lot of emotion. And you can literally see it when you go to the courthouse. And the first floor of the courthouse is the family law courts. And the second floor is felony court, third floor is civil, and the fourth floor is misdemeanor and DUI. If you walk along the first floor hallway of the courthouse on any given day, you'll notice the tension. You'll notice the increase in emotion among the attorneys and the people in the courthouse. And it's related to the state's attorney's office because those people, like anybody else, want to make sure that they're treated fairly and with dignity and respect. And as state's attorney, you have an opportunity to take a leadership role and to make sure that everybody that walks into that courthouse in Waukegan or any of the Park City or Round Lake or Mundelein branch courts, that they're going to be treated fairly. They may not walk out happy, but they're going to walk out of that courthouse and know that the system was fair and that they were treated with the dignity and respect that they deserve.
I guess a whole new program would be on the juvenile detention center, but we don't have time to go into juvenile. But I was reading in the paper where a youngster, I guess in the South, got a teenager, 16 years old, got a life sentence. But I don't know all the circumstances, but I want to talk about the prosecution of youth here in Lake County, and maybe sometime in the future. Our time is running out, but I would say this though: you might end up with just your family is very important for support in order to keep your sanity. Right?
That's the most important thing there is, and that's why I'm doing this. I've put out there that I'm running for my family and yours. And when we think about what motivates us every day to get out of bed, and here this morning to get up and get out of bed and get going, every day it's our family. And that's what drives us to be successful, and that's what drives me every day to make sure that our streets are safe, is my family. But also, running a campaign is an incredibly stressful and hard thing to do, and I'm so fortunate to have my family behind me. And everybody on my campaign team is family and friends. I don't have paid political advisors helping me out. I have my friends and my family, and we're all sort of doing this for the first time, but we're in it together. And everybody that's involved in my campaign believes in what I'm trying to do, and luckily believes in me. And I'm going to keep working hard, and hopefully I won't let them down.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it from Attorney Michael Nerheim. He's a Republican candidate for the office of Lake County State's Attorney. This has been Community Focus. My name is Dr. Waddell Brooks Sr., your host.